Alright folks, this is Harris Sultan. On the 7th of October 2023, a group of terrorists tore down a fence, invaded a territory and began killing indiscriminately. They didn't target soldiers. Their goal was to kill as many civilians as possible. Sure, they killed soldiers as well, but the primary objective was to kill or kidnap unsuspecting civilians. They didn't care if their victims were grandparents, children, women, the elderly, or even babies. I suppose when your goal is to inflict terror, there are no rules. We immediately saw Muslims around the world celebrating the terrorist attacks, and social media exposed their barbarity. People like us knew immediately that they would regret it. Israel was going to retaliate severely. To be fair, my knowledge of Israel was quite limited. Naturally, I was angry and I was fine with Israel's heavy-handed response, but I was surprised at the lengths Israel would go to minimize civilian casualties, even when faced with an enemy whose sole strategy is to maximize its own civilians' casualties purely as a war tactic. I quickly came to understand the sinister nature of Hamas's tactics. Their leader, Ismail Haniyeh, now killed, proudly declared on Al Jazeera that he needed the blood of Palestinians to succeed.
كما قلت وفي كل مرة أكرر إن دماء الأطفال والنساء والشيوخ لا أقول تستصرخكم بل نحن الذين نحتاج هذه الدماء لكي توقظ فينا روح الثورة.
When your strategy is to ensure as many of your own people are killed, there's nothing anyone can do to minimize civilian casualties. For example, Ukraine doesn't want its civilians to die. Russia wants to kill and terrorize Ukrainian civilians, but Ukraine doesn't. If Ukraine followed Hamas's logic, they would also seek to maximize their own civilian casualties to guilt-trip the West into providing more aid. But they don't. Because Ukrainians are not evil. They value the lives of their people and their soldiers. Hamas doesn't. And what's truly sad is that people outside the conflict, such as the Muslim diaspora, also seem not to care about ordinary Palestinian casualties. I'm not exaggerating. I say this because from an ordinary Muslim living in the West to Muslim politicians, none of them have put any pressure on Hamas to release the hostages or to surrender. However, they're very active in sharing violent videos, often fake, straight out of Hollywood, of Palestinian civilians. They only seem to care about Palestinian civilian lives when it comes to pressuring the West to influence Israel for a ceasefire. It's evident that they are not genuinely interested in Palestinian civilians. Some may even believe they care, but they don't. Otherwise, they'd be pressuring Hamas instead of glorifying them. They don't even condemn the 7th of October, nor do they condemn Hamas. Some openly call them freedom fighters.
Hamas they're classed as a proscribed terrorist organization. Do you think the UK has made the wrong decision?
Of course. It's not Hamas the terrorist. It's America the terrorist. No, and Israel is terrorist, not Hamas.
In the UK, Hamas are a proscribed terrorist organization. Do you think the government has made the right or the wrong decision in doing that?
Well, it's controversial, but I think Hamas are freedom fighters.
Despite all of this, I believe Israel goes above and beyond to minimize civilian casualties. Something, by the way, I wasn't aware of before this conflict. Perhaps the anti-Semitism I grew up with blinded me from even attempting to investigate it. And millions, if not a billion plus Muslims are still suffering from that disease. Israel drops leaflets, sends text messages, and even makes phone calls before bombing areas where its intelligence believes military assets are located. Israel loses the element of surprise, yet it remains one of the most maligned countries in the world. According to current estimates, out of 40,000 casualties, around 13,000 have been Hamas fighters, something neither Muslims on social media nor Hamas acknowledges. According to them, all 40,000 casualties are Palestinian civilians, and not a single Hamas fighter has died. If that were true, it says a lot about Hamas hiding in their tunnels while watching their fellow citizens die. But we know that is not true. Hamas has lost around 13,000 fighters, making the civilian to combatant ratio approximately 2-to-1. 2 civilians, 1 enemy combatant. In Iraq, the US's civilian to combatant ratio was 3-to-1, and in Afghanistan, it fluctuated between 2-to-1 and sometimes 4-to-1. For America's drone strikes in Pakistan, it was 4-to-1. The US didn't even inform Pakistani authorities when they were about to drop bombs. In one instance, the US bombed a wedding in Afghanistan, killing 26 insurgents and 37 civilians, including 23 children, 10 women, and 4 men, with another 27 wounded. So despite having one of the lowest civilian to combatant ratio, Israel is accused by everyone, not just by Muslims, but also Wokistanis, communists, LGBTQ plus activists, etc., of being the worst of all. I mean, it has to be anti-Semitism. There's no other explanation. So Israel thought, all right, if you don't accept a 2-to-1 civilian to combatant ratio, how about we give you the best civilian to combatant ratio, say 10-to-1? Nobody can achieve that. Even with boots on the ground, you can't accomplish that with people who purposefully use civilians as shields, knowing the Western forces, including Israel, abide by humane rules of engagement. Unlike Hamas on the 7th of October, Israel can never aim to maximize civilian casualties, and Hamas knows that. That's why they use it as a strategy. As you know, Hezbollah has positioned its armed militias on Israel's northern border, forcing 75,000 Israeli residents to move south. Israel has shown restraint at the behest of the United States, but Hezbollah, backed by Iran, is not backing down. Israel has started carrying out precision strikes on targets inside Syria and Iraq. You may recall that on the 7th of February 2024, the Israeli Air Force launched missile attacks on several locations in central Syria, killing 10 people, including 6 civilians and 2 Hezbollah members. Following that attack, Reuters reported that Hezbollah believed Israeli intelligence Mossad was tracking Hezbollah commanders via their smartphones. Consequently, Hezbollah instructed its fighters from top-level commanders down to rank-and-file soldiers to start buying pages, thinking they were foolproof and would keep Israel away. Or so they thought. Well, as you've heard, Israel intercepted thousands of Hezbollah's pager orders from Taiwan and filled them with just 2 ounces of explosives, just enough to target the pager holder without harming others nearby. Israeli intelligence then sent a message, one we'd all love to know, and after a brief pause, boom! Hezbollah confirmed that 12 people, including 2 children, died. Of course, the death of 2 innocent children is tragic, but reports suggest that 10 of Hezbollah's rank-and-file soldiers died in the highly precise attack. This brings the civilian to combatant ratio to an unprecedented 0.2 civilian to 1 combatant. Israel should be applauded for this, as it went above and beyond to minimize civilian casualties. But, unsurprisingly for me at least, people are still not satisfied. Do you know why? They are actually upset that more civilians didn't die so they could continue their usual propaganda against Israel. Moreover, Lebanon's health minister reported that around 2,800 people were injured, some severely. We've all heard generals say that if we had a magic button that would only target combatants and spare civilians, we'd press it. It seems Israel has found that magic button, yet people are still unhappy. This proves to me and to every sane person that no matter how much care Israel takes to reduce collateral damage, they will still hate Israel. So the question is, should Israel go to extreme lengths to minimize the civilian casualties of people who don't even care about their own civilians? I think Israel should keep trying its best to minimize civilian casualties. This is what sets Israel apart from its enemies, despite the propaganda against it. We don't know the full details of the operation or how Israel pulled this off, but we've got to commend them. War is ugly, and Israel didn't start it. Sadly, 2 children died who were simply born into a society that doesn't care about their lives. The difference is, most Israelis and pro-Israel people are saddened by the deaths of those 2 girls. However, on the other side, their terrorists have killed many children, including the 12 Druze children who died recently in Hezbollah's indiscriminate bombings. Forget Hezbollah or Hamas. Islamist propagandists worldwide on social media celebrated it. They never condemn it when Israeli children die. And that's how I know that we are on the right side of history, while they're not, no matter how often they claim to be. Israel has been very patient with Hezbollah's threats, likely due to pressure from Joe Biden. But sooner or later, unless Hezbollah backs down and retreats from Israeli northern border, a war with Hezbollah seems inevitable. I believe it's actually already started. Israel has the technology and, thankfully, the willpower to destroy Hezbollah. But let's hope Hezbollah doesn't use civilians as human shields like their Hamas counterparts. The amusing thing is that Islamist propagandists are now trying to scare ordinary Westerners, claiming Israel has changed the nature of warfare and how can we know if our phones or other devices are safe? By the way, Israel didn't stop with pagers. After the pager attack, the next day, Hezbollah's walkie-talkies started mysteriously blowing up too. Some reports suggest other electronic devices have also been detonating. Whether this strategy will yield military success remains to be seen, but Islamist propagandists are now afraid to use their electronic devices. I've seen social media posts from Muslims saying we should boycott all electronic products. Yeah, now they'll be messaging each other via ravens and pigeons. But what about your cars, huh? Just saying. Maybe switch to donkeys instead, like your prophet used to travel. Perhaps this is how to stop their hypocrisy. They love using Western technology, but they hate the West. And Jews, of all people, have a lot of hand in this Western technology. Hezbollah's leader has vowed unprecedented retaliation.
This will be confronted with a severe reckoning and a just retribution in expected and unexpected ways.
Yes, we've all seen how their threats pan out. I think Israel has nearly eradicated Hamas, and in a few months, Hezbollah will also be defeated. And at the time of the recording of this video, Israel has already started bombing Hezbollah's locations. Well done, Israel. Can I apply for Israeli citizenship? Israel is probably the only Western country that hasn't lost its backbone when dealing with radical Islamists. The US, UK, France, and Germany, for some reason, bend over backwards for the radical Islamist populations. Perhaps they'll start changing their approach as the threat of homegrown Islamists grow. Let's wait and see. I hope you enjoyed today's video. Like, share, and subscribe. And if you can support this channel, that would be much appreciated. You can do that by going to patreon.com/HarusSultan or buymeacoffee.com/HarusSultan. You can also contribute via PayPal. The links are below in the description box. Until next time, ta-ra. If you'd like to support my work, you can become my patron by going to patreon.com/HarusSultan, or you can simply buy me a coffee.